Hello, I'm bekkiflaherty, and this week I'm going to be showing you how to use this trailing floral template to make this pattern here. This template is the third one of a set of 6 which you can find in my Etsy store, but if you want to test the idea out first, you can get this template for free from the Pattern Maker's Toolkit and follow along with that one, swapping in the colours and flower shapes for what we're using here today. For accessibility, this video has fully edited subtitles, and I've also set up timestamps, so if you're a regular here, feel free to go ahead and skip to the beginning of the tutorial. This is a more advanced level tutorial. If you've never made a pattern using the diamond method in Procreate before, then I suggest checking out this video first because it covers everything in much more detail and at a slower pace. I've also got lots of beginner friendly pattern tutorials on my channel which will help you get better acquainted with the way I make pattern repeats. This next part is very important. You may be used to dragging and dropping files into Procreate, but if you do it with PSD files, it will flatten all the layers, so be sure to import it the way I'm about to show you. Also, yes, the thumbnails are white and look empty, but I'll explain why in a second. So let's get started. From my gallery screen here, I'm going to import the third canvas. First thing we need to do is turn the sketch folder on. I save it with these hidden because it helps to save on file size. For some reason, saving something with a white blank screen takes up less file space than if you have stuff showing, and that allows me to upload it to Etsy in one single zip file. So don't panic when you initially download the files and all you can see is blank thumbnails. The template layers are all there, you just need to come in here and turn them on in the layers panel. So you'll see this has all the layers that you'll be familiar with if you've followed any of my pattern tutorials before. We've got the sketch diamond here on this layer, we've got the template underneath, and if you are not using this canvas setup but you're just using the free template, on a layer above your free template you just need to draw a diamond roughly the same as this one. It doesn't matter if it's not straight lines, it doesn't matter if it's not perfectly in the middle, all that matters is that it goes all the way off the edges on each side of the canvas. So I'll just delete that one now because we've got one set up on this layer. And I'm going to start by drawing on an empty layer above my sketch diamond. So this template has got all of the leaf and stem positions that we need marked out for us, and all we've got to do is trace over them and put our own spin on the leaf and flower shapes. In this pattern we don't have any extra pink motifs, I managed to get it all to fit within the diamond, so we'll be drawing the black motifs and then making the blue ones by duplicating those. So we won't actually be using our extra folder for this one. So I'm going to start on this empty layer here, and I am going to use from the floral stamp set that comes with this canvas, I'm going to use this little bud shape here. So I'm going to stamp that into each one of these black circles, not the blue ones, just the black ones. And then I'm going to turn off snapping and magnetics, and I'm going to use that to rotate this round so the angle that that comes in, it kind of makes sense and flows up and through there nicely. And then rather than stamping and doing each one separately, I'm just going to duplicate this, drag it up here and just twist it around each time. And as you can see, if I stamp another one of these here, you can see the line quality on this one that we've just done compared to this one underneath. We've only done a couple of transformations on that, and that's already gone a lot more soft and fuzzy on the edge, and that's why we do all of this duplicating in the sketch layers, and then when we come to illustrate everything we draw it in its final position and we don't have to move anything around. Just get rid of that one now and we'll carry on duplicating, and I'm just going to duplicate the bottom one each time rather than making this one fuzzier and fuzzier, so we'll just go off duplicating the bottom one. And I'm going to go through and get that in place for all of these. So now I've got all of those black circles filled with that flower stamp. I'm going to pinch all of these together and merge them down with the diamond. Then we can duplicate this layer, tap to transform, turn snapping and magnetics on, and then we're going to drag it up and up into this corner. And then we're going to duplicate this and snap it down into this corner. Each time you do this, be looking out for these orange lines there. Duplicate and drag it up and over to this side, again orange lines there, and then one last one, dragging it down into this corner. And you'll see that as we do that, each of these blue circles is filled with the motifs we made up here. And that's how we're going to build the pattern out. We'll illustrate everything in black in the middle, and then these blue parts will get made by duplicating that at the end. So I'm going to pinch and merge these top 4 layers together, tap and invert it so we can see which ones are the ones we're supposed to be illustrating and the ones we can leave. And then I'm going to start up here in my pattern folder. So I'll turn that one on. You can hide that, and then in here I'm going to add a layer above the pattern marker, and we're going to start by drawing the stems in, and the ones marked in green are the ones which you need to draw in first. These ones in green will be the ones that cross over and need to be merged in. I think I'll use this dark blue here for the stems, and I'm going to use my tracing crayon and turn the stabilization up on this one. So I'm going to start on this one first. I'm going to draw all the way down here and just end past here. And eventually that's going to be the bit that merges in with up there, and we can check that they line up properly. So I'm going to follow this down, sticking as closely as I can to the green line, and then we'll see how well we did in a second. I'm going to draw this one in and we'll merge them both at the same time. So we'll start up here and we need to then merge it in with down the bottom, sticking as closely as we can to the green line. And then we need to get these 2 edges to blend in with each other. So we're going to draw a line going completely off the edges of that corner, and then again completely off the edges of that corner. So then we're going to duplicate this layer, tap to transform, and we'll drag one down here and snap it into this bottom corner. Oops. If I move this up, and we can see the orange lines there. And then we can zoom in and see how well these are blending in with each other. I think this one could do with a bit more curve on it. So on this bottom layer, the one that we drew, not the one we duplicated, I'm going to erase back up this line back up a little bit, and I might redraw this one a little bit as well, just because it looks a bit chunky and wobbly there. And then on this layer, we're just going to rejoin with this line and just merge it in with this one there, and then do the same with this one. And just merge it in with that line there. And now we've got this continual line that's going to keep repeating on forever on the canvas. We can get rid of this top duplicated layer now. And now that those lines are in place, we can just trace over all the other black dotted stems. Then once all of your stems are in place, we can then illustrate the leaves on the layer below. So we'll add a layer underneath, and I'm going to use this blue colour to draw the leaves in. Then we'll fill all these leaves with colour drop. And then to fix this halo that we get there, we're going to duplicate this layer, go to our adjustments and add a Gaussian blur of 3%. Then we're going to hide this duplicated layer, tap to select, and we want an automatic selection, and tap anywhere that you haven't drawn, and then adjust the threshold. I've got mine set to 88% here, so you want it to come just past the edge of the leaf but not past this gap there. Then you can invert the selection, add a layer and tap to fill, and that's going to fill an area inside there. Then with that one hidden, you can pinch and merge those together. And now you've got all of those gaps filled on that layer all in one go. So now we're going to move on and illustrate these little flower bud things. So add a layer above your stems, and we'll start with the lowest part, which will be this frilly bit underneath. And I'll use this blue here to do that. So we'll just draw over that like this for each one of these. So once those are all drawn and filled, we can add another layer above that, and then we'll draw these kind of collar bits on now. And I'm going to use, actually I think I'll use this darker colour on these bits, so I'll alpha lock that and fill that, and then I'll use this lighter colour on these top parts. So just draw those down here. And then on top of this, I'm going to add a layer, and then in this light pink colour here, we're going to draw the buds on. So I'll draw those kind of so they come over and past the edges of those collar bits there. And then they end down at the bottom here in a little point. And now I'm going to move the sketch folder up above the pattern group so that we can see these lines to trace under, and we'll change the opacity on this. So now I'm going to add a layer above the pink shapes and we'll make that a clipping mask, and then with this, try with this hot pink colour and see how that goes, and we'll use the line detail brush and we're just going to trace over all of these little lines there. Like that, and we could actually turn the template layer off so that we can see this a bit better. And then for the dots, I'm going to use this mini dot brush here. So I'm going to go around and repeat that for all of the different flowers on this layer. So now we've got all the basic shapes and details in place for this, let's turn off the pattern marker, let's put a background colour on, and we can probably turn off the sketch layer altogether, I think. So because this was quite a simple one, I think we'll put a bit of shading on here. So over the leaves, I'm going to add a layer, make it a clipping mask, and then I'm going to grab this 50% grey colour here, and using a texture brush, I'll use the small one here, I'm going to make the blend mode of this layer colour dodge and 40%. And then onto the edges of the leaves, I'm just going to draw this on, and the colour dodge will just lighten that slightly. And then going back down to this leaves layer, I'm going to add another layer, make the blend mode on this one colour burn and 40%, and using that same 50% grey colour, I'm just going to add a touch of that to the bottoms of the leaves like this, and then they'll blend into the stems nicely. So now we're going to use that same shading technique to add a bit of shading detail to these flowers. So we'll go to the layer above the layer we clipped down, add a layer above that and clip this one down too. We'll make this one colour burn 40%, and we'll use that to just add a bit of darkness to the bottoms of these. Then we'll add a layer underneath this one, so it'll get clipped in between the two, and we'll make this one colour dodge 40% and use this to just add a bit of lightness to the tops, like that. Then I'm going to use this speckles brush on each of these two layers to add a few speckly details to it. So you can see that just adds a few of those extra little speckles there to the shading, so you get some darker parts up there and some lighter parts down here. We could also do that on the leaves down here. So I'll go to the colour burn layer that we did over the leaves and just scribble over that one, and also the same on the colour dodge. Now we've got some nice speckly texture on the leaves there. So now we'll add a little bit of shading to this layer as well. So to do that, we add a layer, clip it down and make this one colour burn 40%. Go back to our textured brush and just make that a bit smaller and just add a bit of darker shade where it comes out from underneath that part there. Then we'll add a layer underneath that, it will get clipped between the two, and we'll make this one colour dodge 40%. And we'll just use that to put a touch of that lighter colour on the ends of these. And then again we can repeat that, scribbling the texture over both of those layers, the colour burn and the colour dodge layer. And then let's do, the last bit is a bit of texture on this layer. So again we'll add a colour burn layer above that and clip it down. And we'll just add a bit of darker colour just around this edge there. Then we can add the speckles on that layer as well. And then go back down to this layer that's got those lighter blue bits on it, add another layer so it gets clipped in between, and this one will make colour dodge 40%. And then with the texture brush again, we'll just add a bit of lighter colour to the outside there. And then again, we'll just scribble over that one last time with the lighter colour there. And then this pattern is nearly done, but one last little detail I want to add in, and I'm going to turn the sketch layer back on for this because I want to see where the edges of the diamond go. There's just a few little flower stamps. So I'm going to add a layer, and I'm going to use this little flower shape here and this bright pink colour, and I'm just going to put that into any of these spaces here. Let's put the other sketch layers on so we can see where things go. So any of these little spaces here, I'm just going to stamp this little flower into it. And then I just forgot one extra last little thing that I wanted to do. I can hide the sketch now, and everything else here apart from the stems has this kind of texture on it. So what I want to do is add a layer above the stems, make that a clipping mask, and we'll use Colour Dodge 40% and see how that goes to start with. And I'm going to use the brush here in the floral set, this subtle texture, and I'm going to change the colour to grey. And then I'm just going to scribble over this whole layer all in one go. And that's going to add this subtle texture to this layer so it kind of matches in with everything else as well. So now we can build out this pattern tile. So we can turn off our background colour, swipe down with 3 fingers, copy all, come up to the top here, swipe down again and tap paste. We can actually delete this whole extra group now because we didn't use that for this one. Turn the background colour on again, and we can duplicate this layer, drag it up and snap it into this corner, duplicate again, snap it into this bottom corner, and repeat that for these other 2 over here, making sure you see those orange lines there each time. Then we can erase the marks on the middle there and on this bottom layer as well. The layer order on this pattern again matters, and it's just this part here. You need to make sure that the one in the corner here, which is this one, you need to make sure that that is underneath your main pattern. So we just drag that one under there, and then that bit will then be fixed. And I think I'm going to do a last minute change of background colour to this pink colour here, I think. So as always, making patterns this way won't give you those gaps around the edge when you export to Spoonflower, but we should always test that before we export. So to test the pattern, let's pinch all of those together. We can swipe down with 3 fingers, copy all. So now we have a flattened copy in our clipboard. Swipe down again and tap paste. Then add a layer underneath and make this a dark colour fill. Then on this pattern layer here, we'll snap this up here into the top corner, so that says 1800 pixels, and we'll duplicate that, drag it over here, and then we can zoom in here and make sure there's no like black line showing through, and that is looking okay there, and this edge is all looking okay. So we can pinch those 2 together, duplicate and drag this one down to the bottom there, and then find the middle line here and make sure that there's no black line showing through there, and that edge is all lining up nicely. So we can pinch those 2 together, and that is our finished pattern in repeat. You can find this template plus 5 others over in my Etsy store, as well as the original Pattern Maker canvas and brush set, which has got all the drawing brushes I've used today. If you're a Pattern Maker's Toolkit member, you'll get 10% off everything in my Etsy store. The Pattern Maker's Toolkit is kind of like a Patreon group, except it's free. You get access to all the resources in the Pattern Maker's Toolkit on my website, including those I make for my Skillshare classes, early access to some of my YouTube tutorials and drawing prompts, discounts in my Etsy store, and 1 new freebie exclusively via email every month. If you want to learn more about my Procreate to Photoshop workflow using automations and smart objects, you can find that on Skillshare. If you're new to Skillshare and you sign up using the link below, you'll get an extra 30 days for free. All the links for everything I've mentioned are in the description, and don't forget to subscribe here if you want to see more pattern tutorials just like this every week. That's all from me today. Have fun, stay creative, and I will see you next time.